Hello, and welcome to Radio NIGP. Welcome to November and all that comes with it. While it feels like we may have just completed the previous fiscal year, we're flying into the fall, and your team at Radio NIGP wishes you the very best for this holiday season. In this episode, we look at the things that we're thankful for. In our profession, we're most thankful for contract clauses that may be hyper-specific when we draft them, but come to appreciate them more when they come into play during the life of a contract. These are the clauses we are thankful for. So grab your drink of choice, sit back, and enjoy this episode of Radio NIGP.
Hello, my name is Barb Johnson, and I'm a longtime practitioner of public procurement, and I want to share with you a clause that saved us a lot of time, and it is for which I am thankful. Oral presentations were a part of our request for proposals process, and oftentimes they would go long and we just wouldn't have the right people there. So we added a clause that limited who could be in the oral presentations of any company that had submitted a response and was one of the highest ranked offers in an RFP. And I'll just read it real quick. So it was about oral presentations, and at the city's option, proposers may be asked to make oral presentations about their proposals to the evaluation team and other city stakeholders within 5 calendar days of notification. Each presentation shall be made by the project manager identified by the proposer to oversee the implementation of the project. This gave us an opportunity to test drive the proposed project manager and also get full responses to any questions we had once the presentation was completed. I hope this helps you. It saved us a lot of time and made sure we got all the good information we needed. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hello, everybody. This is Keith Glatz, and I'm coming to you today to talk about the clause that saved me. And I've actually got a couple of clauses, but I'm honored today to have as my guest Mr. Don Buffum. And Don's going to join me while I talk about my clauses. Welcome, Don.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Keith.
And my clauses are insurance and indemnification. Let's take a look at the insurance clause first. Don, do you do something? Did you do something like this when you were?
Oh yeah, we had definitely our legal department wanted us to have all those topics covered.
Right, and basically the insurance clause, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the onus off of the organization, the governmental entity, and place it at the vendor's expense in case something goes wrong. So if they come on our property, if they run a big dump truck and knock one of the columns on our driveway, their bollards down, well, they have to pay for it because they have general liability insurance that they are covered by, auto liability insurance as well, and workers' compensation insurance to ensure that if any of their workers are injured on the job, that we won't be responsible for it. The vendor will be responsible for it. And sometimes we include a professional liability insurance when we're talking about something like a bridge design or something of that nature, when appropriate. And we always required contractors to maintain that insurance in full force to the life of the contract. And what we always did for our situation is we put the specific limits and everything else. This is a much more detailed clause in the invitation to bid or the request for proposal as it gets into the limits and the different types of coverage we require. But for sake of brevity, I've just included this short page here. And we would always state in our contract per the city's risk and safety manager. We required certificates of insurance to be held by the city, and we would require the city to both be an additional insured for the general liability coverage, as well as a holder of the insurance certificate. So they had to put our name on it. So if anything happened, they couldn't come back on us because they had us as an additional insured specifically. And this protected us against a lot of different types of damage. And we usually didn't do a darn thing with anybody coming on our property unless we did have the insurance. So, Don, does that sound about like how things worked in Mississippi?
Yeah, we were in the same boat. I I wish I could say we did a really good job of keeping track of all those certificates, and you know, I wouldn't say we did sometimes, but the bottom line is we had the coverage as part of our contractual requirements. So, as you said, it saved our backside several times.
Well, holding the certificates is an ominous job, and I don't know of too many entities that don't have a problem keeping track of the certificates, especially since they usually expire after a year. You have some contractors that have projects that go on for a couple of years, but not advertising any. But I know there are applications out there, software that will help you with that.
Yeah,
I don't have a specific one to tout right now, but we do have access to those in the market. But we have the partner of insurance, and that partner is called indemnification. Don, what was your favorite contract clause to negotiate?
it wasn't indemnification because our attorneys didn't give me much latitude to negotiate that area.
Well, it wasn't anything we would negotiate either, usually, but we often had that. Let's say that the vendors would try that one every time.
Oh yeah.
And that basically requires that the vendor actually hold us harmless for any acts they may perform on the job, having to do with maybe the protection of the improvement, signage, mode of traffic, anything like that. If it was their act that caused something to go wrong, they were responsible under this indemnification clause. And where it saved me was when I worked for a Northern Illinois municipality near Chicago several years ago. We were working on an underground utility improvement. Well, it just so happened that one day somebody was making a delivery of the big truck. I don't know if they didn't see it or whatever, or as an attractive nuisance, who knows, but they ran smack dab into the improvement and damaged their equipment. So what did they do? They always say the plaintiff attorney's rule. They sued us and they sued the contractor and anybody they thought could possibly have anything to do with making payments out of their deep pockets. So case went to trial, and it wasn't our part wasn't too long involved. The court basically found that yes, in fact, there was some liability, but the court specifically told us that city, you had an indemnification clause which protected you and held you harmless. So you don't owe a penny on this project. Mr.
Nice.
Vendor, you completely owe hundreds of thousands of dollars to this plaintiff, and we fined for the plaintiff. So this indemnification clause saved our entity hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's why so many of us include indemnification clauses in our contracts today.
Fantastic. Those are good clauses. Appreciate that.
And we appreciate all the good clauses around this time of year. And this was just one of them. Well, actually two of them, but they sort of work hand in hand.
Yes.
So, Don, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Yep.
I appreciate your input. And so this is Keith Glatz reminding you that this is Radio NIGP.
Oh, hey there. This is Brooke joining you live from Utah. And today we're going to talk about the clause that I'm thankful for. And there's two clauses that I wanted to address that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about yet, but should be. And this should be a conversation that you are having with your legal team and your admins about putting in now that AI is becoming more relevant today. The first thing we're seeing is vendors are starting to take our RFPs and putting them through an AI to analyze and ask questions. This is fine. They can do that. But a lot of times when we'd get a response back before AI, we'd get one or two questions because a vendor would actually read the RFP. Now we're getting AI generated questions being asked. A lot of them are duplicative, irrelevant, or don't really belong in the RFP process. And how do you combat that? One of the ways you can do that is with a clause. And while it won't eliminate AI generated questions, it can at least set up expectations for your vendor community to know that you are not going to respond to like constant like 50, 60 questions that are asked that are answered already in the RFP. So I put this request or this hypothetical question into an AI engine, which is ChatGPT, and basically said, what would you do in this scenario? And they spit out a clause that I like, and I'm going to take that to my city attorney, but I wanted to share it with you as well. The first clause is encourage human review and engagement. Respondents are expected to carefully review the entire RFP and all corresponding documents before submitting questions. By submitting a question, the respondent acknowledges that they have reviewed the RFP in full and made reasonable efforts to locate the information prior to asking. The city reserves the right to disregard questions that are duplicate, irrelevant, or demonstrate that the respondent has not reviewed the solicitation material in full. Now, it won't stop vendors from using AI to ask a question, and you should probably review those questions and ask yourself, is there a legitimate cause or a need for that type of question? But it will at least set expectations to say, hey, you are responsible to find this information first. If it's not in the RFP, then by all means, ask me this question. The second thing we're starting to see is vendors that don't actually have a business model made up, but they're responding to RFP by using AI generated content and basically saying, if you award us this multi-million-dollar project, then we will hire our employees and we'll buy the supplies and we'll be able to do this with an AI assisted business model. That's not the need or the responsibilities of the government agencies to have a bunch of startup vendors that have that much risk. So another way to combat that is to say propose another clause in your template for RFPs and basically say all proposals that rely on AI generated content or representation that do not correspond with the respondent's true capability will be considered a misrepresentation. If it is determined that the respondent has submitted a proposal that misrepresents its ability to perform, the city may, at its sole discretion, pursue any of and all of the following actions: reject the proposal for terminate the rewarded contract for cause, withhold or recover payments made under the contract, report respondents to state or federal authorities for false claims and fraudulent misrepresentation, disqualify the respondent from future solicitations for a period determined appropriate by the city. The respondent acknowledges that it bears full responsibility for the accuracy and authenticity of all proposed content, regardless of whether an AI tool was used in its creation. Again, it's not going to stop a vendor from responding to an RFP using AI generated content, but it puts the blame or puts the full responsibility on that vendor, saying you better be able to perform these tasks and accommodate this thing. And if you can't, then we're going to have problems because that delays the RFP process, that delays the procurement life cycle and everything else involved with it. So again, I would recommend taking your scenario or what you think is going to happen, generating a proposed clause, and then taking it to your legal team and let those legal experts really evaluate how they want to respond and update your main template so you can combat some of these issues that are going to start seeing on board coming up. But with that, I hope you have a great holiday season. Thank you for listening to Radio NIGP and have a great day.
Hi, this is Tara, and I'm here with the Hot Topics team and a couple of guests. And we're actually going to talk about a couple of things that we're thinking going into the new year and talking about really thinking about procurement differently. And so during the closing plenary of the forum session, Rick Grimm, as the outgoing CEO, shared a couple of challenges with us for the coming years. One of those being to step up to the stage to really take on the challenges that we face and realize that we are capable of those things, to watch our language, and I'll go a little bit more in depth about that when we talk about the incoming CEO, and then to not stop believing in what we do and that what we do has value. And I think those are all very interesting things, because to be a public servant right now is difficult. It's always been, I think, a little bit difficult in procurement because we are the unsung heroes and people don't always understand what we do. But I think public service in general feels like it's kind of being challenged right now as wasteful or not really being in touch with what the public wants. And then when we talk about what it means to watch our language, I thought it was really interesting. We recently did an interview with the incoming CEO, Debbie Trueblood, and she really talked about, as someone who's not from the procurement profession, this idea that we all say we fell into procurement. We all say nobody chose this profession. And she's challenged us to think differently about the profession and to talk differently about the profession. And so as a group, we were thinking that the upcoming year for Radio NIGP, maybe we should really take that challenge on directly in all of the sessions that we do. And so I'm going to share or kick it over to Dawn to share sort of what that would look like for us and the challenge that we're giving ourselves at Radio NIGP.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah, that's a great introduction. The world is changing really rapidly, faster than it ever has. I've been doing this for 45 years, and changing from carbon paper to NCR paper, which is no carbon required for you young people, was huge. Then we were still mailing contracts and purchase orders on paper. Nobody's doing that anymore. So what's changing next? And I think the challenge I have for myself and for everybody else is, how can we think differently to improve the world? Not only saying, okay, I like your idea better than my idea, so I'm going to change to do it that way. But what about those ideas that haven't been thought about yet? What about the ones that are just out there in the universe someplace? We've got to start thinking about those. Now, maybe after we think about them and logic our way through it, we'll find, okay, maybe we are doing it the right way. But we've got to be open to everything as far as changing the way we're thinking, changing the way we're doing things. And if we're going to be true leaders, we've got to help our people working with us, our suppliers, the departments we work with, to understand the importance of thinking differently. So that's why Radio NIGP is going to focus this next year. We have a theme of thinking differently. And just a couple of the ideas, I'm going to throw it over to Charlie. And Charlie, you can throw out some ideas you've got on what we can do to think differently over the next year.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Hello, everybody. I am really fancied up today with my baseball hat on, my long sleeve T-shirt, so I apologize. But Don and Team Tara, that is very interesting. I think we always have to constantly think outside the box. When you say think differently, I think that's something we do all the time, is think differently. If a challenge comes to us that is outside the norm, a lot of folks look at us, the procurement professionals. What can we do to make it better? Or there's a new RFP that they want to issue, and we've never done something like this before. What can we do to make that happen? So I love the idea of thinking differently, especially, I am still 29 years old. Okay, there's some laughs. I think I'm 29 years old. I probably act like I'm 29 years old. But it's funny because, as Don said, the world is changing constantly. It is constantly changing. Our roles, the way we think, is constantly changing. Um, I'll give you a one quick story. So I was sitting with my nephew and my brother the other day. My nephew is 18 years old, and my brother is in the marketing communications area. And he said, "My whole world now is AI. How we handle and how we do AI, it's out there." He said, he said to my nephew, who is now a freshman in college, he goes, "You need to use AI and not plagiarize, but use it to get your thoughts in there. And the AI will help you put something together to make it your own." And it really hit me. And I use AI a little bit, but I'm like, man, so my brother was telling me you could drop papers in there and it could start writing for yourself. Like AI could write as if it's you. That is mind blowing to me. So Don, as you said, the world is constantly changing, and we all know AI is out there and it's not going away. But I challenge the young folks out there, not just in age, maybe new to procurement, young at heart. But what can we do to think differently? Is it a sole source? How do we treat sole sources? Or maybe how do we manage contracts differently? The one I really want to talk about, and then I will wrap up my little piece, is I chose procurement because I wanted to be in procurement. I love what I do. I want to continue doing this until I retire, but I chose procurement. You have a lot of people say they, as Tara said, you fell into it. We chose it because you didn't have to say yes. You could have moved on to something else. We chose to do the awesome stuff that we do every single day. So, Don, so as a challenge, like I said, everybody out there, let's start thinking differently. Let's look at our profession differently and start saying, why do we choose to do what we do every day?
Excellent, Charlie. Barb, what do you have to say?
Well, thank you. These are great lead-ins to what will be our theme at Radio NIGP this year. And we obviously are excited about it. We're talking about it. We're talking a little differently about it. Combining Rick's Live Your Script and Debbie saying we need to change the way we talk about our careers, to say, as Charlie just modeled, I chose to be in public procurement. Just the way we say, I chose to be devoting time to public service, devoting time to professional development, and also to ensure that I invest in myself and my entity thereby. So we understand that there are many, many excellent members of NIGP who have some thoughts about this, how to change your thinking, what may have worked. I know in my time, there was a big deal about if you have an obstacle in the road, don't focus on the obstacle, focus on the paths around it. So there's been a push to try to widen our horizons. That's why Radio NIGP would like to know what you think. And we're going to borrow the Insight Community Perch Issues. So you go to nigp.org, and then you go to the Insight Communities, and then you pick Perch Issues. And we will post a question and hopefully this video in that regard. Go ahead and tell us what you think. Maybe you can even share with us when you changed your mind about something. It's okay. It's okay. Or we tried this and we failed, but we learned so much about it. And we were able to incorporate a bunch of improvements in how we operate. You have a very, very, as Tara said, and Don and Charlie, you have a very, very important position. You see the organization like no one else. You see it all. We're where the rubber meets the road. If we're not doing it, then it doesn't happen. Even wonderful reports, they just sit on the shelf unless a human with skill, as you have, touches on it. So take a look at perch issues. Think about how you can think differently and tell us what you think. We may follow up with you. I hope that's okay. Thank you, Don.
Right. George, what's your perspective?
I mean, it's not much to add. I mean, the conversation is excellent. My small contribution would be in trying to think differently. I think Charlie said it, like we get to decide to be in the profession. All of us, we've had different journeys to get here, but every day is a decision, right? And personally, for me, 15 years ago, if you told me that I wouldn't be playing baseball and I can transition into procurement, I wouldn't believe you because I probably didn't think I had a place, right? My first 2 years were very difficult in procurement. There was so much to learn. I think a lot of people trying to get in our profession may think that there are obstacles there, but in all honesty, like there's a place for you. You can be an ex-athlete. You can be someone who's creative. You can be somebody who's into radio, and we may have a place for you here in Radio NIGP. But it's just to think differently, like you guys are saying, to encourage everybody that we're a very warm and inviting profession. We're lifers, and if you can see that, if you can take that perspective and say, hey, you can do it too, I think we'll just be better off for everybody. So excellent conversation. That's my only contribution.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And I guess I want to close it with something Tara said earlier. Now, of course, this is going to show my age too, but don't stop believing. Have a great day.
Thank you, Don.
Hi, Radio NIGP listeners. My name is Valerie Scott, and today I am going to share with you a clause that I am grateful for in our purchase order terms and conditions. It's an often overlooked and probably not often thought about clause, but it is an important one. And the clause that I am grateful for is the Uniform Commercial Code, or the UCC, as a gap filler. I am reminded of a time when we issued a purchase order for a certain high demand commodity during a certain global pandemic. There were many stories at the time that were circulating about fraudulent versions of this product, and also there were many unconventional and new sellers popping up who claimed they could get this hot commodity for government buyers. In one particular instance, we issued a purchase order for a significant quantity of this item from a seller that we had not worked with before. Long story short, when the first delivery arrived, we rejected it upon inspection and deemed it as non-conforming goods, stating that what was delivered was not what we had ordered on the purchase order. This is where the UCC as a gap filler came in. While our purchase order terms and conditions covered general information like our ability to reject the delivery, the seller disputed our decision and rejected our claim that the goods were non-conforming. We were able to rely on the UCC to help justify our position. Although we never reached an agreement about whether or not the delivery was conforming, we were able to use the UCC to help argue our position on the matter and eventually come to a resolution. Behind me are the terms and conditions in effect at the time of this order. You can see in Section 6, one of the things we have is that the city shall have the rights and remedies afforded by the Colorado Uniform Commercial Code and other applicable laws. So for context, while the Uniform Commercial Code is kind of a model code, The state of Colorado has actually adopted it into law under the Colorado revised statutes. Additionally, under some of the terms and conditions that specifically apply to the acquisition of goods, there is a warranties paragraph, number 12. Vendor warrants that the goods are merchantable and described on the purchase order. All provisions and remedies of the Uniform Commercial Code relating to both implied and expressed warranties are herewith referred to and made part of this agreement. So even though our terms and conditions didn't specifically outline every circumstance that might come up and every remedy we were afforded, the UCC gap filler came in and helped us to sustain our position about why we believed the goods were non-conforming and helped us eventually come to a resolution on the issue. And this, my friends, is why I am thankful for the UCC as a gap filler.
Greetings and welcome to my favorite clause. This is Mike Beavis, and this is my favorite clause, which is the compliance with all laws clause. It's my favorite for a couple of reasons. One is it's one of the shortest clauses, and two is it's one of the biggest clauses. So let me read it to you, and then I'll tell you what it means and how it works in real life. Here it goes. The vendor certifies that in performing this contract, they will comply with all applicable provisions of the federal, state, and local laws, regulations, rules, and orders. So there you go. Pretty short clause, but it incorporates all federal, state, and local laws, rules, regulations, and orders, which is a lot of stuff. To give you an example of how it applies, I'll give you a real example that applied multiple times in one jurisdiction I worked in, and that was the Chicago Park District, where I was the purchasing agent. At the Chicago Park District, we had a number of facilities that were along a beautiful street called Lakeshore Drive, which is a parkway, and a parkway is a divided highway. And we had several beaches that operated along the lakefront. We had 2 golf courses that operated along the lakefront. We had several harbors that operated along the lakefront, and all of them got deliveries. And without fail, several times a year, some delivery driver would decide to use Lakeshore Drive to make his deliveries. Now, the thing about a parkway is trucks are not allowed on a parkway. So trucks are not allowed on Lakeshore Drive. It's well posted. Everybody knows that. But they thought because they were delivering to the Park District, they got to drive on Lakeshore Drive. And when they got a ticket, they complained. And on occasion, they complained to the cop who pulled them over, and rarely, but often they would call and we would say, "Oh no, issue the ticket." On other occasions, they would turn the ticket in thinking they would get reimbursed for the ticket. And we would have a laugh about it and explain to them that they couldn't do that. But that's just one minor way in which this provision could apply. It could also apply for occupational safety and health violations. It could also apply for all kinds of things, all kinds of ways a vendor could break a law while performing your contract. And this gives you the opportunity to find them in breach of the contract if they don't correct their actions. So my favorite clause this time is the compliance with all applicable laws. It's both short and large at the same time. So thank you for listening. See you again on Radio NIGP.
I'm here to talk about one of my favorite clauses, and here's what it is. It's a clause that I put in our RFPs in particular, but our solicitations in general. And here's what it says. Department reserves the right to amend the resulting contract within the scope of what is advertised in this solicitation, contingent upon need and the availability of approved funding for additional time up to fill in the blank years and or no more than an additional fill in the dollar amount, or to the extent allowed by law, or other parameters that you put on the limits of this. So that's the clause. Now, we've all heard of agencies that sort of stretch their contracts beyond what was originally intended, which is not fair to the supplier marketplace. The main way to be fair and open is that right from the start, you try and brainstorm and anticipate what your entity might possibly need from that contract. You don't have to commit to it at the time. You just should reserve the right to do it later. You describe the extent of what you might amend the contract for, and you describe the limits on how much you might amend it, the limits to the scope of any amendments. And if you describe in your solicitations what you can do, and then later you do what you said you might, well, that's fair to everyone. And I've used this many a time. It's helped our internal clients, and it's been fair to the community. So I recommend it to your use. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kurt Buffington coming to you again from Radio NIGP. And I'm really excited today to have with me Shanda Carpenter, who is our Director of Content. And she has some exciting news about the call for presentations for the 2026 Forum in Columbus, Ohio. Shanda, good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. So what's going on? Tell us the scoop.
Yes, absolutely. So we're really excited to announce the call for presentations for Forum 2026 will officially open on December 17th. And that's going to run through January 18th. After which, after the submissions come in, they'll go to the NIGP Content Management Committee, who will review and score all the submissions. We're planning to send out notifications to accepted applicants around February 13th.
Great.
So one thing to know is what really shaped this year's approach was the feedback we gathered from members. So
I understand you did actual focus groups and surveys with our members.
We did. So after Denver Forum last year, on the survey, we asked if people would like to be involved in shaping the content for Forum 2026. And we just had a tremendous response. Because of that interest, we followed up with detailed questionnaires and focus groups. And members weighed in on topics like learning paths, workshops, sessions, and even session depth. What should be foundation, what should be advanced, and what skills procurement practitioners really need right now. That feedback that we received, combined with our evaluations, additional survey data, and insight from the Content Management Committee, became the backbone of our content strategy for Forum 2026 in Columbus, Ohio.
Great.
So some of the things that we learned on the feedback was our members are looking for more advanced content. We've always had advanced, but this year we're looking for 50% foundation and 50% advanced, which is a bit more than we've done in the past.
Absolutely.
The content really needs to be fresh and relevant and directly applicable to the job. The members are looking for those tangible takeaways that they can take back to their entities and apply on the job.
Okay.
We also learned that learning paths are a big hit. So these are the 4 separate sessions together that are on one topic that an attendee, if they take them all, they can take an assessment and earn a badge. So we're going to work with subject matter experts again this year and produce 4 advanced learning paths. One will be construction, one will be leadership, one will be technology, and one will be project management.
Great.
Yeah, even though we already offer conferences on leadership and technology, members have consistently told us that these are really critical learning needs. So we really feel like it's the best thing to do to make these available as learning paths at Forum as well. Additionally, project management has really emerged as an essential skill. And that path, it will focus on project management within the context of public procurement.
Great.
Some of the other things that you'll see on the call for presentations this year are advanced workshop suggested topics. And so the workshops are going to be 2 sessions, each 75 minutes, and they're going to be more activity driven. Some of the topics will include contract and risk management, RFPs, negotiation and relationship management, legal, and cooperatives.
Great.
We're looking for proposals on topics like that. Additionally, when we take a look at the foundation versus advanced learning sessions, and those would be the single 75-minute sessions, for foundations, suggested topics include procurement process fundamentals, contracting and compliance basics, communication and collaboration skills, customer mindset and service mindset, strategic thinking, and digital tool and technology readiness. Now, on the advanced side, some of the suggested topics include strategic leadership and organizational impact, AI and strategic digital procurement, data-informed decision-making, political acumen, and leadership maturity and people management. So overall, the call for presentation is very much shaped by what our members told us they need most. We're really excited to see the proposals that come in to build a strong, relevant program for 2026 forum.
That sounds great, Shanda. I mean, first, the focus groups, the listening to the members, delivering to the members what you heard they want. So I think that's great. I love as you know, I did a learning path last year or this year in August. Love doing it. I think it presents a lot of opportunity for our members to really dig into something over those 4 sessions. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you wish to let us know or let the members know?
Just to be out on the lookout for that call for presentation. That's going to be released December 17th. It will close January 18th. So you can submit your abstract at any point in time when that's open. There'll be lots of materials online, not only the application, but all the suggested topics that I mentioned for you to use as resources when submitting your application.
Okay. Well, great. Again, thank you so much, Shanda, for joining us. This will be exciting news, and our radio and IGP listeners will be the first ones to hear about it. So Thank you, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Hi, this is Don Buffum again with Radio NIGP, and I'm here with my good friend Keith Glass. And today I'm going to talk about a clause that saved me, one that I've been able to fall back on. And of course, I'll be interested to hear if Keith has had any similar situations. Throughout our careers, or my career anyway, I've had a lot of client departments that did a really good job of working with our suppliers as far as coming up with ideas and solutions, and they create really close relationships. But once I put that RFP on the street, I get a little bit worried about that relationship sometimes. Does a supplier go to one of our client departments and ask a question and get an answer? And does the different supplier get a different answer? So the questions and clarifications clause really identifies what communication should go on between the buyers and the sellers during the RFP process when it's on the street. There should be a clause that clearly states that all communication should be in writing or email with one individual. And you specify that individual in the RFP and give people the contact information for that individual. All those questions should go to that individual. And then the clause should also state that we're going to respond to all the questions together to everyone, again, in writing. I've seen clauses that say that any contact with anyone other than the individual can be cause for disqualification. The main thing is that we need to make sure that people understand that verbal communication is not binding communication. It has to be in writing. And this clause, questions and clarifications clause, simply identifies how that communication is done. It's a simple clause, but it has saved me in the past because I've had people that have said things over the phone to one person, and actually may have said the exact same thing to another person, but they interpreted it differently. And when you have different interpretations, you can cause problems and end up in protests. So by having everything in writing to the clarified person, it makes it a lot easier. Now, I know this time of year, it saved me, but at this time of year, it's also things we're thankful for. It's a simple clause, but in fact, in life, aren't most of the things that are simple are the things that we're most thankful for? Anyway, that's my thoughts. What do you think, Keith? Keith, have you ever had a situation with that?
Well, yes, we always had a clause in our contract solicitations for that. I live in the state of Florida, and in Florida, basically anything that somebody asks or wants to know something about, we have to make that available to the public. We have to be completely transparent. And that clause probably saved us a few times as well, because uh, we don't want somebody saying something to one vendor, not saying something to the other vendor. That's a big problem, especially in Florida. Everything has to be said at once and has to have a consistent message while being transparent. So yes, I agree with you 100%, and it has saved almost all of us here in Florida, that particular clause.
Thanks, Keith. That's, like I said, a quick clause to think about, just to cover your backsides. Just This is Radio NIGP. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to the November show of Radio NIGP, the clause that saved me. Have you ever done a procurement, or maybe in my case, a pre-qualification step for a procurement? And as you see the responses coming in, you realize that, man, this is not going to go right. And how am I going to resolve the issues of this not going right? Well, it happens. And sometimes it's a clause within your solicitation that can help you to get out of having to award to a firm that you know will not be able to perform the work. So in my case, the clause that saved me was this. If this pre-qualification process results in less than 5 pre-qualified firms, we reserve the right to cancel the pre-qualification process and issue an invitation for bid with minimum qualifications in lieu of applying for the pre-qualification or reissuing the pre-qualification. We, in our sole discretion, will determine whether to proceed with the application of the pre-qualification process or not. So in that step, thankfully, I only received 2 responses. Neither response was going to be anywhere near to meet the qualification standards. And because of this clause, it saved me from having to go into the next steps with firms that I knew could not perform the work. So this is the clause that saved me. Have a good day.
Hello. Today I'd like to highlight to you a clause that I am thankful for. The Intellectual Property, IP, and Data Rights Clause. It is sometimes overlooked until the end of performance and often surprises both the government and agencies and the contractor. Let me start with a few basic concepts. First, the key factor in determining ownership is who is paid for the development of IP and data being first produced under the contract. That's the fundamental aspect that drives who has ownership. Next, you need to look at the actual clauses in those contracts themselves, because often they change. Let me give you a few examples. First, if you are performing under federal dollars, you likely will have the FAR, Data Rights Clause 52-227-14, Rights and Data, General, in your contract or grant. It is critical that you understand the rights and responsibilities under that clause that flow from the federal dollars that are being utilized in your contracts and grants. Secondly, you need to understand what your state and local agencies' clauses and provisions are. They may be different and actually swap the ownership rights to being fully owned by the state and or agency, and the contractor having a requirement to transfer all rights and ownership interest to those entities. And lastly, all clauses require notice to the other party of data rights, and in some cases, the requirement to gain approval to use data for future opportunities. So those are a couple of the highlights I'd like you to start with, and think about in the beginning of a contract rather than at the end, to avoid unnecessary and potentially costly surprises. Hopefully this discussion on intellectual property and data rights is helpful to you, because it surely has. I have been thankful for understanding it fully as I administered my contracts, both for federal, state, and local agencies. Hope you have a wonderful November and a great holiday season, and look to talk to you again soon.
Hello, friends. What an amazing broadcast this month. I am sure you would all agree that we each have so much to be thankful for. As we step into the coming months, we tend to see many people operating in generosity, kindness, and love for one another more than any time of the year. I would encourage each of you to take the time to notice and participate in these random acts of kindness and carry them beyond 2025. Take that mindset and those acts of service and ask yourself, how can I carry this into every month of 2026? Try it and see the amazing and awesome things that will manifest in your life. For those of you that know me, you've likely heard me comment that very rarely does someone have an original idea. Someone somewhere has likely thought of it before. But we should learn from one another and share those ideas. So with that, I want to close with some thoughts and quotes from those that have gone before me. My first challenge to each of you would be that in this season and going forward, that you would follow the words of Maya Angelou when she challenged us to be present in all things and thankful for all things. Being present can be a challenge with the constant demands of today and the constant stream of notifications from our cell phone. But maybe, just maybe, we need to turn that off once in a while and focus on the things happening directly around us. Play a game with your family. Visit a nursing home and bring joy to a person that maybe hasn't had an outside visitor in some time. Call a person you haven't spoken to in a while just to see how they're doing. The possibilities are endless. Now, I also understand that being thankful can sometimes be a challenge for those that might be struggling or going through a dark time. For you, I hope that you can take comfort in the words of Charles Spurgeon. It's not how much we have, but how much we enjoy that makes happiness. Taking that one step further, Germany Kent shares, it's a funny thing about life. Once you begin to take note of the things that you are grateful for, you begin to lose sight of the things that you lack. So keep smiling, my friends. Be thankful for every chance you get, not because life has been easy, perfect, or exactly like you anticipated, but because you choose to be happy and grateful for all the good things you do have. Author unknown, by the way. Until next time, friends, stay thankful.